Welcome to the Lightforge podcast. This is Adwicta.
This is Merps. Hello. Hope you guys are staying cool, doing well. We are doing our second podcast in the last 2 days. Yesterday, we were on Keladar's podcast where we
Keludar and
decided,
Kelenable's podcast.
yes, we decided the best arena card of all time. You know what? I will choose to not spoil it for
Yeah,
right
let's
now.
not spoil it.
If you want to figure it out, we were on there with Keldar, Kellenable, Dreads, and then of course the two of us.
So
It
we
was
did
a
not have enough votes to just vote for what we wanted and
I
collude
know.
and make like Gibbling or whatever Gibberer the number one card.
Well, we didn't even have that choice, but you can look at it in Keldar's VODs. Also, you can just listen to the podcast as well. But it was super fun, just a really interesting thought experiment, and we go through a lot of the history of Hearthstone as well. So if you guys haven't seen it, you should definitely check that out.
Yeah, definitely check it out. It was really fun to do, and there is like you just learned so much like talking about it. Like the amount of stuff that we talked about, I was surprised at how deep it went. Because it's just kind of this like March Madness bracket thing that you're like, all right, like let's have some fun with it. But we got really deep on many of these matchups, and I think it'll be a good listen for literally anybody who's interested in Arena or is nostalgic about Arena. You know, even if you don't play anymore, it's just it was a good time.
Okay, enough about that. On to our own podcast. We got a lot to talk about, mainly because there were some big changes and some big announcements. So let's just dive into that.
Okay, announcement number one: there is going to be a new expansion in Hearthstone. Who saw that one coming? It's going to be released on the first week of August, as everybody expected, and it's going to be called United in Stormwind. This is going to be they also released the mechanics for it, so we're going to go over the mechanics, and they also released 15 cards. We're probably going to end up covering most of them, but we're not trying to, right? We just kind of need them to explain the mechanics. So the two mechanics, well, yeah, the two mechanics that are really relevant to the arena that are going to be introduced in this set. One is tradable, which means you can cycle it for 1 mana. And if you're not familiar with MTG, cycling is the ability to pay 1 mana, put the card, shuffle the card back into your deck, and then take a new card. So, you know, you get a small card later on in the game and you don't want it, pay a mana, get another roll at it. You take up one of the cards that's a situational card and the situation doesn't apply. Like one of the examples, one of the good examples that they had, I'm glad they showed it, was Rust Rot Viper, which is a common neutral, 3 mana, 3/4, battle cry, destroy your opponent's weapon. So it's like a ooze. But it is tradable. So if your opponent doesn't have a weapon, is not a weapon class, and then you kind of get this card not as a 3 drop, you may want to trade it for something that's bigger, right, or more situationally useful.
It's an interesting mechanic. It's something we've seen in other card games. Frankly, we should be surprised we haven't seen it in Hearthstone in the past 6 years or so. But this is something that other card games have incorporated, not just in this way, in many ways. Like shuffling stuff back into your deck and kind of paying something to refresh, right? So I think this is a welcome mechanic, and this mechanic as well is going to be skill testing. You have to know what is in your deck. You have to play the percentages a little bit. There is a cost to it. It's just very cool. I'm glad they're going down this pathway. We know basically nothing about the complete set right now because we don't know that many cards. But in terms of mechanics, this should be a very, very welcome one
Mm-hmm.
because it is so skill testing, and at the same time, it's not random. As in, it's not like the Scorpid into third, fourth copies of stuff in constructed. And I'm talking about in constructed terms because that's what they really care about. People aren't complaining about that. It's stuff that people had already put in their decks, which people deem fair, right? Everyone had a chance at that. It's when you're introducing stuff from quote outside of your deck that people get frustrated. So this tradable mechanic, I've heard a lot of good things about it on the Hearthstone Twitter from people who are like, number one, it's about time, and number two, good. This is a good new mechanic. It's very controllable.
Yeah, from an arena perspective, it's not as good as from a constructed perspective, because in constructed you really want to draw cards. You want the stuff that you put into your deck. In arena, you don't really care that much. But it's not going to break the game. Like, I can't imagine any of the tradable cards being insanely good in arena, because then it would be really insanely good in constructed. But looking at the power levels of what they're coming out with, they're going to be playable. There's another tradable neutral common that was revealed: Impatient Shopkeeper, 3 mana 3/3 rush, tradable. Totally playable card, right? 3 mana 3/3 rush. Not the best card, but a pretty good neutral, even without tradable. And then with tradable, hey, you get it later on, you trade it, potentially get another chance to draw your big things. So I think it is definitely more skill testing. And one of the reasons why it's skill testing is because think about how you're going to play this. They made a whole new mechanic on the board, like an area of the board. Now, depending on where you drag this card, the card has a different function. This opens up so many new potential things in Hearthstone if, people aren't too confused by it. So to activate the tradableness of the tradable ability, you have to drag it to your deck rather than onto the board. It's not like you play the card and then you select trade or, play the minion like a choose one. It's instead a totally different thing based on when you drag it onto the board. And that's exciting because of what it could mean in the future.
Drag it to your opponent's face, charges back.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. But yes, I'm looking forward to seeing all the cards that they have for this expansion. And we're certainly going to be seeing tons and tons of tradable cards, which is nice. I like that. This is a mechanic that I think you could do a lot of interesting stuff with. And then, of course, if you look at the expansions recently, they don't just focus on this mechanic. They have stuff that works tangentially with the mechanic as well. So it's like, oh, if you've traded, let's say, 5 minions this game, do something extra, right? So something that uses the tradable mechanic beyond just each individual tradable mechanic. So those are the ones I'm most looking forward to, because that's going to be the stuff that impacts constructed the most, but it could also end up changing arena.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the one other tradable card that we actually saw, that is okay. So I'm just gonna go over the other tradable cards, just so we cover them. Mage has a 4 mana card called Fire Sale. Deal 3 damage to all minions. So it is a 3 damage to all minions, like Hellfire, but doesn't hurt characters. It's pretty normal double-sided board clear, and arena will be good, and it's tradable in case you have a lot of the board. Then we also have another tradable card. I think there's only one other tradable card that was revealed, which is a warrior card, 3 mana, gain 8 armor, tradable. That's not just because it's tradable does not make it playable in arena. You didn't need 3 mana for 8 armor before. The fact that you can now pay 1 armor to cycle, pay 1 mana to cycle it does not make it good. It makes it not terrible though. Like, that is a card that you can legit draft with the idea that you will trade it every single time. Like, think of it as a 1 mana card that says draw a card. That is not a terrible card in the arena. It's not a good card. You definitely take a Yeti over it. But, hey, if your other options suck, that's a not terrible card.
Yep.
Alright, so the second mechanic coming in is, it's not really a mechanic, it's more like a set of cards that follow a theme, like an Og Merchants or, I don't know, those Hog Riders that screwed over taunts back in the day. They have these mini things. I'm trying to think of something more recent that was this mini kind of mechanic that they did. But they're going to do something like this, and it is Steeds. And that is what everybody is up in arms about. So steeds are like Spike Ridge Steed. It's literally the same mechanic. Spike Ridge Steed was the first steed. It is a buff. It goes on a minion. It adds the ability of the steed, which in Spike Ridge Steed's case is Taunt, and then it also adds its stats, which in Spike Ridge Steed's case is +2/+6. And then when the whole thing dies, there's a death rattle in which you actually summon the steed back up with its ability and its base stats of 2/6. So Spike Ridge Steed, at the time that it was released, amazing in the arena, dominated it. And that's what makes everyone scared. So I'm going to go over the two steeds that we already know. There's only two steeds that we know so far, but we're guaranteed to get more. Hunters have Ramming Mount, give a minion +2/+2, and immune while attacking. When it dies, summon a ram. The priest one is the other steed that we know, and it is the Elic Mount. 7 mana. Give a minion +4/+7 and taunt. When it dies, summon an Elic. And again, remember, the steed itself has the ability. So the Elic that gets summoned has a taunt. That's another 7 health of taunt. And the ram that gets summoned still has immune while attacking.
It is very clear what this does. The flavor is insane because unlike some other cards in which maybe the stats don't exactly add up, you are adding these stats because you are adding the mount, and the mount stats exactly add on to the minion. It's so clean. Okay. Design-wise, I love it.
Okay, but seriously,
it is very clean.
Imagine you get on the horse, right? Like, and you had like 100 health, and the horse has like 100 health, and now you have 200 health, and then someone hits you for 200 damage. Why is the horse still alive? Isn't the whole point of how you got the extra 100 health that the horse is part of you, and now when you get dealt 200 damage, you should both be dead?
You know what? That kind of makes sense.
Thank you.
That kind of makes sense. I get what you're saying. I don't have an answer for you, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
It should be get an ability, maybe get some extra attack, and when it dies, then you when you die, then you resummon the horse for however much health it has and the same abilities.
I mean, the only way to answer that is the enemies are too dumb, and whatever damage, they are only aiming it at you. Yes. And their damage is very targeted.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very targeted. And by you,
targeted fireballs and meteors.
Yeah, the minion that is on top of the mount, right?
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, they're not targeting the mount at all.
No, mm-hmm. But they have to deal double the damage onto you.
Yes, exactly. They overkill you, and that is it. I have no idea though. Okay, that is a point well made. I don't think we're gonna find much answers there. Maybe we can make this a campaign. You guys can ask the devs on Twitter. This is the burning question. This is the thing they have to answer for. But we move on. We carry on.
You know, besides how squirrels are 1/1, and so are like trained soldiers of Stormwind.
Yeah. Well, we don't know exactly how big those squirrels are. And are they magical squirrels? I don't know. Do they have like some sort of curse to them? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess maybe they're giant squirrels.
They're giant squirrels, dude. Perhaps.
All right. So the mounts, they're causing some concern because the one mount that we've had before was really insanely good, and these don't seem to be any worse in terms of how they're statted. And one of the things that means we should expect in this expansion is to have a lot of buffs, right? Like if most of the classes are getting a mount, they're all getting a buff. And these buffs, at least so far from what we've seen, because the remaining mount has to at least have 1 health. That means all these buffs are buffs not just to attack, but also to health. And probably to attack too. And those are, like, they're real buffs. And these are things that people normally didn't really have access to outside of, I don't know, like a Fungomancer. And it is going to change the meta up. I think it's going to make holding the board and having the board very dangerous. It's going to really incentivize you to trade. But given the current state of the meta, you're very much not incentivized to trade, actually. for against most classes. So maybe it'll cause the meta to shift in a way that brings back a bit of the balance and forces it into like the metas that we had maybe like 2 3 years ago, where usually the right choice was trade and then go face. Nowadays, I feel like usually the right answer is to go face, and every now and then you trade.
You better have a good reason to trade. You better have a really, really good reason to trade. And that reason has to be beyond, I'm afraid of this one card. Unless that
Mm-hmm.
one card just completely wrecks you and ruins you. But then, of course, you have to ask, like, well, if they have that card, do I ever win? So whenever you ask yourself these days in this meta, kind of why am I trading? You better have a really, really good response to it. Otherwise, yeah, the default play is to go face, and face is correct.
Mm-hmm. So that may change with this new expansion. Who knows? Certainly adding powerful mounts. So one of the things with these, and you can really tell with the hunter flavor, but even the priest one, if you have like in the hunter one, it's very explicit, right? It's 3 mana for +2/+2, and then you summon a 2/2 at death rattle. That's not good. You're paying too much for all that. But it's immune while attacking, which doesn't mean much unless your minion has initiative. If your minion has initiative, whether because it was stealth before, or it popped out from dormant, or it has rush, or you just had it alive, then you put the mount on it. Then you effectively also give it a divine shield, and then you get a pretty good deal at that point. Even if you don't get another hit with it, right? Even if you just get one hit that is immune, that still ends up being a pretty good card. Remember the 3 mana paladin card that gave a +3/+1 and a divine shield? That was a pretty good buff, right? That was like Blessing of Kings level buff. And that's going to be the same for Ramming Mount, except you also get a 2/2 at the end. So yes, the 2/2 also has that same immune while attacking characteristic, but no matter when you get that 2/2, it's not your turn. Like, if you make your 2/2 pop out, you don't get to attack with it again. It doesn't have rush. If your opponent makes your 2/2 come out, it probably has a way to deal with it, or else it won't be killing your main minion in the first place, unless it has a taunt or something. So that ability on the ram itself is going to be rarely useful. So you really got to get it where it counts, which means that this really needs to have initiative. And you look at the priest one and you may think, well, that's a taunt, right? We're now no longer in the world in which you need to get initiative in order for it to matter. Well, it's 7 mana. Because it's 7 mana, you pretty much always need initiative until pretty late in the game, right? Like, how are you going to put out like a 3 or 4 drop and a 7 mana card at the same time? Concentrate everything for a hard removal. Like, it's not a good play. If Elik Mount, and Elik Mount, by the way, looks insane. People are already freaking out about it on Arena HS. But if Elik Mount can only be played without initiative, it is like it's like worse than a Yeti. Now, obviously, it's not that bad because you can play when you do have initiative. But it goes back to what I was saying, which is that these cards get, I don't know if most, but a very large portion of their power by having initiative. And if you don't have initiative, if you're always off the board, these cards are not good.
Yes. Here's the thing. Like, Alec Mount is very powerful right now. But Alec Mount really isn't the thing that I'm worried about. Like, for example, when Hysteria came out, I made a huge deal about that, like in our card evaluations, and I was like, Hysteria can't exist. Like something like this, along with everything else that Priest has, they can't have that. Alec Mount, if you just look at how you currently play against Priest and what is the most annoying things that Priest do, and then you look at this card, it's good. I don't think it pushes Priests towards a more toxic class. I
Mm-hmm.
think it is a powerful card. Um, is it a powerful card in 2021? Yes, it is. So even with the elevated power level, this is a very powerful card. Um, I don't think it's one that really. is gonna break the game. I mean, here's the thing. I don't know because I don't know the rest of the expansion. I don't know the offering rates,
And you
right?
don't know even
Uh,
the rotation that it's going to come into.
I don't know what the rotation. So at any given moment, Blizzard, because they definitely just want to prove me wrong, spite me. If I say a class isn't going to be good, they can make it be so toxic with a flip. Not
Mm.
exactly a single flip, but like they can make it. Because that's where we're at. We're at the point where Blizzard is the one who is deciding the meta. So all we can really do, is say, is this card too powerful for the current meta like independently in relation to other cards? And the only thing we can further extrapolate more so than the independent power of the card is, does it let them do something more or something even more unfair than they used to do? I don't think Alec Mount does that. Once again, don't listen to this and be like Merps thinks Alec Mount sucks. No, it's a very, very, very good card. But I don't think it's as problematic of a thing as, let's say, Hysteria was, which if you played Hysteria, especially when Hysteria came out, remember it was 3 mana. Hysteria was unfair,
Mm.
infuriating. It was stupid. You couldn't play around it. It was just one of those cards that, if you played Arena during the 3 mana Hysteria, and even now during the 4 mana Hysteria, but especially during the 3 mana Hysteria days, um, I thought that card was so much more problematic. And that card, a lot of people complain about, but it didn't exactly break
Yeah.
the Arena
Like,
experience.
Hysteria was super powerful, and yet it still was unable to break the arena. So what you're looking at is, like, I think one of the main issues that we have this like PTSD from Steed. Steed came back. Ungoro was back a couple of rotations ago, and you guys remember the Steed meta that came back? No, you don't, because the Steed meta never happened, even though Steed was back in the game. Now, was Steed not offered because the offering rates on Steed got pushed super low? No, Steed was offered the normal amount of time. But Paladins weren't dominating. Steed was not dominating. Why? Because we're in 2021 right now with the core class. Like, you can't have your old PTSD worrying about that here. It's like some of the really insane pass cards that we were talking about that were insane for their meta, in Kel's podcast yesterday. You look at it now, and if they were released, you'd kind of shrug and be like, "All right, here's like a low premium class card, like whatever." Right? And I brought this up on that podcast too, but like when Sludge Belcher and Nax was released, changed Arena forever. Like for the next year. More than a year, actually, because they were releasing sets much slower back then. Nowadays, Sludge Belcher is barely draftable. Like, it's so bad. It's a 3/5 taunt for 5 mana that drops a 1/2 taunt body. Like, what the hell? Like, Yeti held up way better than Sludge Belcher. And back then, Sludge Belcher was way better than Yeti. So it just shows you like how this game has changed. And Elik Mount, it comes one turn later, which is pretty important. It's in a class that, even more so than Paladin, if you leave something up on the board, they will screw you. At least in today's meta, mostly because of lifesteal. Because if you're ignoring their minions and you're going face, you're really afraid of that lifesteal buff. Because then the priest puts it on and negates everything that you've done by going phase, and they get a nice buff and probably eat one of your minions, and then they get another hit on the lifesteal because you still have to remove that somehow. So Elik Mount is going to have a similar kind of effect in terms of what the punish is if you choose to go face rather than remove. So it's not going to change the shape of the meta. Where it does change the shape of the meta is it makes priest kind of impossible to deal with. Like you're because this card exists, you will always remove everything. Why? Because everybody's going to pick it, and it is that powerful that it's almost an auto pick. So if it comes out, that's 14 health. So you're going to have to do this kind of figuring it out, right? Like, assuming my opponent doesn't have a 1-drop, I'm going into turn 7. If I remove something and potentially get 14 health of taunt out of my way, even for the next turn, but I have to remove the next turn again. Would that be worth it in terms of the amount of phase damage I can deal, right? Like, you start having to think about this card. You start having to play around this card, especially around turn 7, turn 8. But you can play around this card by just removing the priest crap. Which you kind of need to do anyway, because they have, like, splitting whatever. They have lifesteal buffs that will ruin your day anyway. So you're always running the risk. This just makes the risk even higher. Now, it's a good card because I think someone on Arena HS made a really good comparison with Scrapyard. And I'm like, yes, it is Scrapyard, which is a good card. Not an amazing card. It's not a super premium. Even in the neutral category, it's not one of the best neutral cards. And Alec Mount's going to be much better than that because it could come out turn 7. But if it ends up being a Scrapyard, that's not great.
Yeah. Okay. You want to talk about one other card, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about one other card. Let's do it and then move on to Battlegrounds. I think this is gonna be one of those things where they give us this and then they don't talk to us for 2-3 weeks before they start revealing new cards. It's nice that they get us excited now, but they're gonna now leave us for a little bit. So we're gonna talk about my favorite card in this set so far, and it is a neutral common 1-drop. It's not a good card, in case you're wondering. It's Peasant. Just Peasant. That's just the name. Not Stormwind Peasant, not anything, just a Peasant. And a Peasant is apparently a 1-mana 2/1. So Peasants deal more damage than trained Stormwind soldiers or Silverhand recruits. Peasants are better than Silverhand recruits at fighting things. Just so we know, this is now lore. And it has the text, at the start of your turn, draw a card. So if it lives a turn, you get a card back. And for each turn past that, you get more cards back. Now, for those of us who have played Young Priestess, whether back in Classic or even nowadays, you will know that if your 2/1 does something, if it has a recurring ability, it almost never stays around on the board. If you're facing a ping class, it's pretty much over. Even if you're not facing a ping class, people always have pings in their hand or just like removals and whatever, and they will target it and it will be gone. So very rarely will it actually snowball into anything. It may live 1 turn. Like, if you go first and you play Peasant, your opponent has to use the coin to hero power it, even if they have a hero power, unless they're Demon Hunter. And if they are any of the other 6 classes, they can't even do anything without having to have a card very early on that has a removal function, right? So it definitely can live a turn, but it's probably not going to live 2 turns. And it's almost never going to super snowball. And if it lives 1 turn, it's kind of got its value. You know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty damn good card if it can be a 1-mana 2/1 that draws a card. But it's not game breaking. You're not going to win the game off a 1-mana 2/1 that draws you a card. And the times that it's just a 1-mana 2/1, that's a really terrible card. So it's this like weird odd balance where if they had released this earlier on in the game, it would be a super toxic card. But now, like, this feels like the kind of high risk, high reward 1-drop that is like not good enough to be like a good 1-drop, but is a passable 1-drop. I don't know. I just really like the design of the card.
The design, I think, fits for the power level right now. I don't love it because there is that very small percent of the time in which you can draw multiple cards with it, and I don't like that. You guys know my thoughts on the Caravans, as in, is it actually like so powerful that we need to get out of the game? No, that's not why I don't like the Caravans. It's because of the blowout potential, recognizing that it is still small. 2-drop shouldn't be able to do that. This is a 1-drop, and here's the thing that tempers it. With the Caravans, what they do is something different. They buff your hand by +1/+1. They generate 1/1s or like on the board to give you like 2/2 worth of tempo when it comes back to you. This only draws you a card, which in 2015 drawing a card was probably the most valuable thing you could do. In
Because
terms
everybody ran out of cards.
because everybody ran out of cards. In 2021, you drawing an extra card when you have the Scorpids, when everything else draws a card, when everything discovers something that generates something that, creates something else, it's not as valuable. It's interesting that you bring up the Young Priestess because Young Priestess has never been good during the time of Hearthstone. From the very beginning, no matter what the meta is, it's been like an okay card. You've drafted it sometimes, and perhaps all of us in the community, misunderstood the importance of one drops very early on. Right? It was like a taboo. Don't pick one drops. Only pick two drops.
Yeah,
Only
and
pick
Young
three
Priestess
twos.
also didn't do anything on turn 1. So.
Right. It didn't really do anything. But if you looked at Young Priestess versus Peasant, you'd say, oh, okay, well, Peasant is better because of the potential to draw a card. But if you look at the difference between Young Priestess and Peasant years back versus the difference now, it's so much closer now. Is Peasant a better card? Yes, it is. But the gap between immediately giving something on your board +1 health and drawing a card, which if someone was playing Arena and then went into a coma for 5 years and woke up, and you just gave them this question on a 1-drop, what is more valuable, right? And how much more valuable? Like if you presented this question, they're coming from Hearthstone in 2015, they'd be like, okay, drawing the card is, I don't know, 20 times more valuable. I have no idea, like something like that. Whereas now it's like, it's more valuable, but the gap has closed so significantly between the two. So yeah, like that's sort of where we're at right now. Design wise, I don't love it for the exact same reason that I don't like the caravans. But in terms of power level, it's whatever. It's not gonna. People are gonna complain about it because people are gonna complain about anything that can potentially have a disproportionate ongoing effect. But yeah, it's just kind of like meh.
Yeah, and here's the thing with card advantage. Even if you just spot your opponent's 5 cards in the beginning of the game, you could still win on tempo, which is probably how you were going to win anyway. So then they just have a few more options than you do. Like, it's really not the end of the world if they have a crap ton of cards compared to you, unless your entire deck revolves around, like, getting the big thing, waiting it out. These days, with all the swing, you're even in like late game decks. You're waiting for a time to swing the game on the board in the tempo and then push face. You're not actually waiting to starve your opponents of cards in their hands. So your opponent's getting more cards in their hands just means more options for them, which is bad. That's why Peasant is potentially a good card and potentially a devastating card if you're a non-ping class and you don't have your early pings. But overall, in the worst case scenario, it still doesn't break the game, even in those games. Like, even in the games where it pops off, right? It does not win you the game. And it does not lose you the game. Far from it. And that's pretty good for in terms of design for a 1-drop. Because 1-drop shouldn't do that. And this one also doesn't do that, even though it looks like an insane ability. Alright. That's it for United and Stormwind analysis. We will now probably just not talk about any cards. Like I said, right, it's 2 weeks probably that we're going to be in radio silence for Blizzard and no card reveals. But even if they start revealing cards, unless something like super ridiculous comes out that we're like, this is the next watchtower, or whatever, or the next 9-mana dragon that we really need to not be in the arena even before it happens, we're probably not going to talk about it. And we'll do a big card review before the weekend before the release date, as usual.
Okay, let's talk about the patch that came out about 3 days ago. We got 20.8. So this is the patch that talked a little bit about United in Stormwind, and that's great and all. And then revealed it's like, oh, hey, log in and get this like legendary for free. But we got one of the biggest BG patches we've ever seen in terms of balancing, shaking things up, and really trying to solve the problem with BGs. And when I talk about problems, I'm not going to get too specific because it's hard to exactly say what is wrong with BGs in a short fashion. As you guys know, I played a ton of BGs in season 2 and season 3. I made it very high onto the leaderboards. And then I haven't been playing much recently, and it's a combination of quite a few things that thankfully 20.8 addresses. So we can talk about that, and I can give you guys a short rundown on how I see things, but know that I have not been playing for the past many months at a high level, and these are just sort of my observations from watching streams. But with this patch, I do plan on going back to BGs. I think it is an exciting time for the game mode.
Cool. So, where do you want to start? The balance changes before we get to the new heroes?
No, let's just talk about the new heroes first, and then we can talk about that a little. Well, we have
Okay.
one new hero. It is Kurtrus. Uh, some people refer to him as Curtis, but he has a passive ability that ramps up. So it's a 3-tier passive. Once you fulfill the first part of the passive, it automatically moves on to the second. Once you fulfill that one, you move on to the third. And then once that's done, you're done. So uh, the first one is buy 3 minions in one turn to give them, the minions that you buy, +2/+2, and progress this. Once you progress it, it's buy 4 minions in one turn to give your hand and board +2/+2 and progress it. So you're very much incentivized to do the next one as soon as possible because you give your entire board +2/+2 as well. And then the last one is buy 5 minions in one turn to give all your minions this game +2/+2. So that means everything you have in your hand, everything on the board, everything that you will see after that point +2/+2.
And this happens
That's
every
Kurtrus.
time you buy 5 minions in one turn from that point on.
No, no, no. That only happens once.
Oh, okay. I was about to
No,
say,
it's not
this
repeatable.
feels
It is not
OP.
repeatable. Well, yes, it would.
Oh,
It
that
would
makes
be.
sense because it's called Close the Portal. So you've
Yes,
closed the
it's
portal.
called
You don't get to
close the
repeatedly close
portal.
the open portal.
Right. Once you close it, you can't close it without opening it. You know? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So,
Is this the portal that he opens, or is he like fighting the portal?
I don't know lore. I'm not a nerd, okay?
Okay.
But
Okay.
Kurtrus right now is very good. Kurtrus is basically tied with Jandis, and we all know how good of a hero Jandis is. And for good reason. This is a good tempo hero. Um, One of the issues that people see with Kurtrus is like if you get like some really good shops and stuff that you want to buff, it could be really good. But regardless, the hero power is just quite good on its own.
Yeah. So the
Uh,
first step comes in what, like turn 5 usually. Like you're not desperate enough that you're staying on tier 2 on turn 4
no,
to use
you're
this
not
ability.
staying on tier. You're not staying on tier 2.
Yeah.
I will say the meta right now, generally, and it holds true for Kurtrus as well. Tier 5 is still kind of the a barren. I'm not gonna say it's a barren wasteland, but um,
Bears.
well, bears are there, but tier 5 is still one of those places where it's just not as fruitful as it was in previous seasons. Now, if you've been playing BGs recently, you will know it's like, oh yeah, of course, tier 5 is not fantastic. And there's a lot of reasons. It's from Bran not being good, period. Lightfang not being good when certain tribes are in because the scaling potential is greater. Tier sixes just being a little bit better, whether from additions of this and that or these the meta changes here and there. So, um, yeah, well, the general meta is a lot of people get to 4 and try to get to 4 quickly. They power up enough and try to eke out some advantage over the lobby on tier 4 such that they can just go to 6.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to go to 6. And some people can go to 6 very smoothly, and part of
Right.
it
So what does
depends
this
on your
have to do with
luck.
Curtis?
Oh no, I'm saying that what you'll do a lot of times is just play normally to try to get to 4,
Yep.
and then
Yeah.
you're
So
still
on
gonna
turn
stay
5, you're
there and
triggering
use
the
that.
first quest. On turn 5, you trigger the first quest. You get +6/+6 and useful stats that you can put on the board.
No. What I've seen with Kurtrus a lot. So
So
on
they're
7 gold, you're still going to no. You're still going to 3. You're
yeah,
still going to tier
yeah,
3.
but 7
Yeah,
gold is
that's
turn 4. No,
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Turn 1 is 3 gold.
3, 4, 5,
Three,
6, 7.
four, five,
Oh, I
six,
see. Okay,
7.
okay, okay.
Okay,
So
I'm
so on
showing you
turn
with my
okay,
hand.
my bad. So on turn 6, that you trigger this.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, my bad. I thought it was yeah, I was one off on my counting of which turn normally you go to which tier.
Yes. So part of the reason that Kurtrus is so good is because you don't have the advantage in the first 5 turns, right? But the first
Hmm.
5 turns, a lot of heroes aren't exactly using their hero power, and then you get that huge spike on the next turn, and then you want to level up, and then you want a huge spike on 4, and then you can either huge spike again and then use that to get to 6, or you can maybe we're differing here, but you can see how it's so powerful, because once you get to 3, you have a huge spike, right? It's a huge, huge spike, and then you can spike again on the next 2 turns
Hmm.
in order to try to propel you towards the tier 6, which everyone wants to get to. So that's how Kurtrus is so high right now, because he just fits into this playstyle of rush to 4, probably stay on 4 a little bit to try to get some advantage, and then get to 6 as fast as possible.
Hmm. That makes sense. All right. So okay, let's not talk about minions. We have a new minion too. But let's continue on with the hero talk. So a bunch of heroes are returning, and Shutterwalk has been removed, which has only
Oh
impacted the
no.
game in that you have better quality heroes now. Like they should really remove some of the terrible ones. And so I'm glad they're finally getting around to stuff like Shutterwalk. And you'll see Illidan get a treatment too. Okay, so we are now at returning heroes. First returning hero, Galakron. Galakron used to have an ability that was 0 mana, replace a minion in Bob's Tavern with a minion from a higher tavern tier. Now it is 1 mana, so it has a cost now. Choose a minion in Bob's Tavern. Discover a higher tier minion to replace it. So it is no longer random.
It's no longer random. Remember, Galakrond was initially trash because it cost 1 mana and it was random. You couldn't discover. So now
Mhm.
it is 1 mana, but you could discover it. Galakrond right now is okay. If you look at HS Replay stats, Galakrond is sitting in bottom of tier 2. So it is a hero that you can pick. You're not going to be extraordinarily happy with it, but you can pick it. By the way, the first hero to actually be reinstated was Lich King. So Lich King
Oh
is
yeah,
back.
fair.
That was due to a bug, not due to
Yeah,
anything
so it's
else.
just it's back, but it's still normal Lich.
It's still normal Lich King. And Galakron is usable. You are going to want to use the old Galakron curve. And the fact that you can discover a minion and you're almost always going for that 6, it's pretty good. Because it's very hard for you to miss. Now, of course, there are ways for you to increase your percentages, and you always want to see what tribes are in. We always talked about, those tier 6 elementals. There's so many of them, and you don't really want them. So if elementals are in, maybe you pick something else. Maybe you're just a little bit more careful with your choices. But Galakron is very pickable nowadays. And you don't have that smooth Galakron curve like you did when it was 0 cost, but you are able to super spike in power very soon.
Yeah, it's like you're paying 1 mana, which is the normal cost it takes to roll. Only instead of getting a full roll, you have to have a current highest tier thing that you don't want, and then your roll guarantees you 3 of the next highest tier, right? Which is just this insane jump. Like that's why it's usable at all, because otherwise there are times when you can't even use it.
Okay. So Galakron is in. Next is Trade Prince Galawix. Probably one of the most interesting heroes they've ever created.
Just begging to be nerfed later on.
Yeah. Galawix has been changed to the new passive hero power. After you sell a minion, get 1 extra gold next turn, can exceed 10. This isn't coin anymore. Like, it's not a coin in your hand. You just gain 1 extra gold, and you're not limited to 10. So, what this means is
So you always could have more than 10 gold, and the system has just hence like so far been restricting you and making you do weird order stuff
yep.
in the rest of the game. Just say it. This is annoying to me that it turns out you can actually do this.
So let me explain this for those out there. And in Discord, Jay Kirik, who is very high on the leaderboard, was kind enough to explain exactly this mechanic and sort of how it works. Because you immediately think of, oh, what if I have like double hogger, right? And I can just print money. How exactly does that work for the next turn? And here's the way it works. So let's say you're starting the infinite pirate thing, and then you sell like enough to get 26 gold on the next turn. What does that exactly mean? You have 26 gold on the next turn. It means that on the next turn, you are capped at 26 gold. As in, you cannot go above that limit. Just like how you can't go above 10 gold when you are normally at 10 gold. The next turn, you start with 26 gold, and then you can never go above 26 gold that turn. But the next turn, like, because on the 26 gold turn, let's say you sell 50 pirates. Then next turn you will have 50 gold and you can't go beyond that, but that is your new limit for that turn. So you're just creating this, this bank, but you're also setting a new limit on the next turn. And then of course, like, we're talking about this, and then as you go on, it literally doesn't matter. You can't use up the gold, right? Like, you're going to get to the point where you never even see your gold move, especially with infinite pirates. But that's the way it works, and there's going to be a lot of instances where it helps to understand, okay, what exactly does that mean?
So what it means is your turn times matter even more now. It's like the opposite direction that this game should be going. At the very least, until they fix the way the rope works.
Galawix is a super interesting hero. Trade Prince Galawix right now, the win rate isn't super great. It's right now at around a mid tier 3 hero, which is at about a 4.5. That's not good for the top 1%. Like, if you are averaging placement of 4.5, you're losing MMR. But this is one of those heroes where, once again, I haven't played Galawix yet, and I doubt that we have figured out the maximum potential of Galawix. I'm not saying that Galawix is going to end up as one of the best heroes.
No, it will. Maybe not in this meta, but it will.
Yeah,
there will at some point be a meta that will make this the best hero super broken, and they're going to nerf Galawix or take him away. This is just like the way this hero is designed. It's not something you're allowed to do in game design for balance. And
it's
so
like when you looked at the Pogo, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you looked at Pogo and you're just like, okay, it's going to be problematic.
Yeah, just not yet.
Someday. Yeah, someday. And then, of course, Jandis comes along, and then it was problematic.
Yeah, like, it's... I hate these kinds of designs, because they, like, seem interesting, but the only way they're interesting is when they're broken, and then they have to be removed fairly quickly. So it's just like, this is the kind of stuff that's like, when they throw flashy stuff at you and make your adrenaline and like whatever mind dopamine stuff pop up, but it's all fake, because you're never going to get to use it and do cool stuff with it. I mean, and that's good, it's what should happen, right? If you designed this without limits, then when it exceeds the limits that it should have had that you never put in, you just have to take it out of the game. So it's just, I don't know. It's one of those game design philosophies that makes it really casino-y, and it crosses a personal line for me and what I consider good game design, but I don't think it's actually going to be problematic because when it becomes problematic, it'll be super obvious and they'll remove it in like a week. But it
Okay.
will be problematic. It will.
We got Maev returning. We all know Maev as the meta beater for a long time. And now Maev's new hero power is the same thing, except after 3 turns, get it back with +1/+1.
All
So
right.
now you wait 3 turns.
So this one was we talked about how to nerf Maiev when Maiev first came out with this hero power that's dormant for 2 turns, give a +1/+1, and it was super ridiculously powerful. And at the time, we were very adamant that you cannot just move it to 3 turns. That will make Maiev not a good hero, like a bad hero. You can't do it. And since then, there's been power creep in heroes. So now Maiev is an even worse hero than what we thought you could not do to keep it balanced. So they obviously didn't take our suggestion, did random other stuff with Maiev, and it didn't work just as we thought. We also talked about what happened if you remove like +1/+1 or you do other stuff to it. It just none of it works. Like Maiev is a hero that can't exist like that. So they eventually go with this route, and Maiev is predictably pointless to play, and might as well not exist as a hero.
Maev right now is tied with Patchwork. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
When you're tied with Patchwork, that's not fantastic. Once again, this is for the top 1%. I think Blizzard is very okay with this. Like, they're okay. It's the Blizzard way, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you're overpowered, and then we're gonna nerf you to the ground. And you can't really say the philosophy is wrong in any way. It's just a matter of opinion. Like,
Well, no, it's not that the philosophy is wrong. It's just that the result is predictable, and they're just okay with the result,
right.
which is fine,
They're okay
right?
with the result.
But like,
Maiev is still in the meta. Like, you will pick Maiev sometimes because it's not the absolute worst hero.
Yeah.
It's just right. Like, it's
but
not the
what you
absolute
need
worst
to
hero.
do to create a compelling normal hero is to make that +4/+4 instead of +1/+1. That's what you need for Maiev to be. It will not be the best hero if you make a +4/+4. Like, this is something that I think Blizzard's just like super concerned about. Because remember what their nerf was. Their nerf was to no longer make it give +1/+1 and instead make it give +1/+0. Ha ha ha. This just doesn't do like it barely affected the win rate. It put a tiny dent in the win rate. Now they move it back to 3 turns. That's such a huge nerf that it was obviously going to be crap, even though they restored the 1 health. The 1 health is nearly meaningless. And giving a +2/+2 wouldn't work. +3/+3 will probably make interesting choices, but at +4/+4, you'll get it back into the place where people actually want to pick it. Which I understand Blizzard may not want it back there, but then you at least have to get to +3/+3. Like, starting it off at +1/+1, not even +2/+2, is just way too conservative.
Because the difference in 1 turn in BGs is astronomically huge. Because if you look at games, yeah, when you're 1v1, we're talking about like turn 13, 14, etc. But like everyone has feared like the turn 8, turn 9 Maiev, and if you just shift that a little bit, and also she has less HP going into that because everything is delayed, right? Everything has been delayed. She's a little bit weaker like every single turn.
Yep.
So her
Because
HP
you're
is
usually
lower.
not using her to like get minions that you put out for stats. You're using her to get econ.
Yeah, it's all the tripling potential. So it's just sort of like whatever you get, and then you're just trying to triple that. But she is behind on every single turn now, so that hurts a ton. That just hurts a ton. She gets ramped up slower, which is a huge deal, and she's just getting beat up more and more each turn. So I mean, I'm personally not that sad that we're not going to see a good Maiev, but yeah, this isn't the most elegant of solutions here.
They actually like +3. Wait, like go dormant, wait 3 turns, come back with +3/+3. That's a actual elegant hero power that you want. Like, that's a flavorful hero power. Like, it's more flavorful than +1/+1 and more balanced, and they just didn't go with it because they were so scared. Which is fine. I feel like they're going to buff Maiev at some point. And I think it's going to end up at +3/+3 if they want to keep this after 3 turns.
I don't know about +3/+3. I can see +2/+2. or something
At
like that.
plus three, my Ev will still not be tier 1 or tier 2.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Like, no, I don't think plus three is a good idea at all. I can see plus two. Anyways,
Most of the
um,
things you get back are literally the plus three will be the same as minus three on most of the things you're actually using its hero power on. So it's only getting the buff on like half of them, and
what do you
it
mean
scales down. Like the
minus
stats on
three?
the thing doesn't matter because you're just gonna sell it.
Oh no, but it allows Maiev to be much greedier because she's not taking damage. That's the thing.
Mm,
Yes, you ultimately sell it, but it's those turns getting to that in which can you put enough pressure on the Maiev through the opponents to force her to not greed, to do the things that she did in the toxic Maiev metas to just like kill people, right? Because what it was like she was like
but
greed,
what you're
pop off.
getting from Maiev is a understated minion to begin with. Like it's not like you're getting a good tempo unit.
Yeah, you're getting understated minions, but you're only getting them for 1 mana.
Right.
So
Right, but you're
you
getting
are
them 3 turns
making up
early.
for that.
I mean 3 turns later.
Right. Yeah. But once you get that, that is like and remember,
Like, and it's going to
she,
be understated. Like, let's say you're on tier 2,
mhm.
you buy the best tier, you put in the best tier 2 unit. Now it's plus one. 3 turns later, everything else is plus four. So yeah, you've
Right.
only spent 1 mana in it, but it's not even like filling the space. You know, like as soon
She's
as you
not
run out of
unmanageable
space,
for
as soon as you
as
get to
many turns as
7
you think she
units,
is.
this is no longer an issue. Like once you
She's
get to
not
7 or
vulnerable
6,
on she's not exactly vulnerable on turn 1. Turn 2, she always wins. Turn 3, like a lot of times she wins that. So like you're really just looking at a few turns like on
but what do you mean turn
maybe
2 she always wins?
yeah,
Why does she always win on turn 2?
she's staying there so she has like two
Oh,
units.
okay. You're saying she wins over the normal like leveling thing because
Yeah,
there are other people that stay
this is what
there
I
as
mean by
well.
pressure,
This
right?
is like the Refam curve. Like,
Yes,
yeah,
she does the reform curve.
right. But like there are plenty of other heroes that do the Refam curve, so she does not always win. She's just on the Refam curve.
Not that many heroes do it. Like more heroes don't do the reform curve than do it.
More heroes are either not on the Refam curve or have actual tempo by turn 2, like extra tempo by turn 2, than heroes that are
Yeah, they don't have like extra tempo.
okay.
Yeah,
I still think a fair chunk of heroes either get extra tempo or are on the Refam curve. Like, maybe not a majority, I don't know, but
some, but not a majority.
okay,
Like
but
some,
that's
not a
very
majority.
far away from always. Is kind of what I'm saying. Like, we're not close to always winning turn 2.
Okay, sure. In the vast majority of time, she at least ties. She at least
Okay,
ties. There we go.
yeah. She at least ties.
Yeah. So when I say win, sorry, like right, she will not take damage.
Okay,
There you
okay,
go.
fair.
There you go. And at
Um,
that point, like winning versus tying, it's like whatever. As long as you are not taking damage, you don't really care about dealing damage or caring about you. But anyways, with Maev, that's we'll see what they do with Maev. And if they even want to do something, right? This is
right.
up to
I'm saying
Blizzard.
they probably won't want to do something. If you want to put her back onto tier 2, it needs to be plus 4. If you want her to just like be somewhat relevant, like plus 3 will put her somewhere in the low end of tier 2, maybe high end of tier 3. Plus 2 isn't going to do that much more, but make her like still a hero that you don't want to pick. But I guess you're less annoyed by it if you have to pick her. I don't know. Plus 2 doesn't seem like a solution, and they might do it because why not go incremental on a hero you kind of don't want to exist in the first place, but.
Okay, so next hero we have Edwin. Edwin has been updated. Edwin never went anywhere. You just literally never saw Edwin. And now instead of giving a minion plus one for each minion you've bought, you give a minion plus one for each minion you bought this turn. Ah, okay. Um,
I mean, Edwin got power
a
creeped.
decent
They
update.
just updated him to fit the power creep.
They updated him to fit, and now he's sitting fairly pretty. He's sitting right underneath Kurtrus and basically tied with Omu. That's pretty good. So Edwin doesn't have exactly the pop off potential that Omu does. Once again, you see for top 1% of players, Omu gets first a lot more often, more than twice as often as Edwin. That shouldn't be a surprise. But Edwin, fills that role of getting the third, getting the second, getting the fourth. And it's because, yeah, if you want to play Divine Shield, if you want to play that sort of like tempo build, the attack is really good. Attack matters. So this is a nice welcome change. It's good to see Edwin be very pickable again.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's Omu is the new power level, so we got to get everyone there. But that's kind of my point, right? If you set a power level at Omu, which is what they've decided to do, which is fine, but you can't be making heroes significantly outside of that power range. Like, what's the point? You're just making the game less balanced.
Mm. Next we have Dino Tamer Bran. Bran has really just gone through so many changes in this game. But the new ability is a passive ability. After you buy 5 Battlecry minions, add Bran Bronzebeard to your hand once per game. So yeah, you just buy 5 Battlecry minions, and you get Bran into your hand. Wow, right? Isn't this the best thing ever? It is not. Unfortunately, it is not. This is like one of those things where we talk about Hearthstone in 2015, and here's like BGs in late 2019, right? If Bran was introduced, we'd just be like, "This is insane! Like this is actually insane." But if we look at the HS replay stats, I think Bran is sitting comfortably. Yup. In bottom tier 4. It is almost a 4.9 average placement, and people are picking him because it's fun, right? It just really shows how far Bran has fallen, and it's really sad. Like Bran, the minion,
Mm-hmm.
was just one of the best things to get on tier 5 and a foundation of many many metas before, has fallen so much that with just a small requirement, 5 Battlecry minions, like any, which is pretty easy to do. You buy a lot of Battlecry minions, which means you can get a Bran in your hand when you're on like tier 3, like immediately. And that means nothing. That means almost
Mm-hmm.
nothing nowadays, because there are other ways to basically ramp. And even if Murlocs are in and pigs are out, it's just Murlocs themselves are pretty bad nowadays. So that's one of the real issues. Like Brand's best complement in terms of tribe is also Murlocs, but Murlocs really, really suck nowadays. So, oh man, I love this design.
They're gonna
As in,
change
it's so
it
fun.
so that once you get like 10 battle cry, get a golden brand. That's gonna be the next change. I can put money on this.
Ooh, or what about after you buy 5 Battlecry minions, add Brand to your hand, and then it refreshes?
What refreshes?
No, no, no. So
Oh, every time you do 5, yeah, brand.
every
Good.
time
Yes,
you do
yes, yes.
5,
Something
you
like
get
that. Yep.
Brand.
Mm-hmm. It's gonna be something like
Oh man,
that.
yeah. All right. Next we have Illidan, and Illidan's new
Okay.
passive hero
I haven't
power.
looked at any of the win rates for the new battlegrounds, and I haven't played in the new meta. This Illidan one was literally my suggestion of how to balance him after like a week after he was released, and it was clear that he was terrible. And you can go back on the Lightforge podcast and you'll see me pitching this. But Illidan basically got +2 attack to the left and right minions in addition to the attacking immediately. Now, given how far back that was when I made the suggestion, that means that with my suggestion, it would have been as good as like pre-half reverted A-bomb. So it should still be crap. Now, the game has had more use for like being able to attack first. But it's still crap, right? Like this is still an unusable hero, right?
Yeah, Illidan is currently still very, very
Okay.
bad. It is lower than Galwix. It's tied with like Kael'thas, and of course, you guys should know Kael'thas is not good these days.
And that's what I
So
mean.
yeah.
Like when I gave the suggestion, Kalasas was like the new hot hero, and so I'm like, with this suggestion, Illidan would be a little bit worse than Kalasas, like a tier below it, but still like you're not super terrible when you pick it. And now Kalasas is terrible, and Illidan's even more terrible, even with my suggestion, just as predicted. Like I don't know why Blizzard's making these kinds of changes now. This is from
Um,
a historical buffs, right? Like they're
who
matching the power
knows?
levels to like
Yeah,
stuff they should have done a year ago.
right. It doesn't do much right now. We'll see. Maybe there's more stuff incoming, and they just want to poke this a little bit,
Oh.
bump it up a tiny little bit.
They wanted to
Um,
confirm that it was not enough. Yeah, it's not enough. It was clearly not enough. It was enough to make it not a good hero a year ago, and then they
okay.
power creeped the crap out of this game since then.
We have a new Syndragosa. Syndragosa, old hero power was at the end of your turn, frozen minions get +2/+1. The new one, you have a targeted zero cost hero power. Freeze a minion in Bob's Tavern. Frozen minions get +2/+1 every turn.
Yeah, so now you can choose to freeze one or freeze all.
Yeah, you just have extra choices now. And if you guys remember when Shady was on, I specifically talked about Syndragosa because Syndragosa was a hero that was always so low on the win rates and if you had some sort of BG tier list. But I saw Shady pick Syndragosa multiple times, probably like 4 or 5 times, and I'm not always watching a stream either. So this is one of those heroes where, and I'm sure there's some other heroes out there as well, that could just be a hidden gem, and now suddenly it is even better, right? Not saying that Syndragosa is an actual good hero that will get you first or second place consistently. But when Shady was on, remember, he was saying, if I'm going to take a bad hero, Syndragosa is, in his view, one of the better bad heroes. And his performances with Syndragosa definitely outperformed the stats, even for top 1% players. So with this change, yeah, I think there's something to Syndragosa here. It's not enough to boost Syndragosa uh, too high on the win rates, but you know, like remember what Shady talked about and try to apply that. And Syndragosa is just sort of better now.
Hmm. Yep.
Okay, Guff. Guff, the meta beater before. The old hero power was 1 mana. Give a friendly minion of each tavern tier +2/+1, and now it is just +1/+1, and Guff has fallen. He's still pickable, but Guff is now bottom of tier 2, top of tier 3.
It's
So
crazy that
yeah,
he's still pickable.
he's
I
still
would have
kind
thought
of
that this would
pickable.
have an even bigger impact.
Nah, yeah, he's still pickable. Guff is still pickable-ish. You're just not happy when you pick it.
All right,
Okay.
next is Overlord Sulfurargug. Hero power for the Horde. Oh, to give +1 attack to the next minion you buy this turn. Upgrades each turn. They doubled it because it was trash before.
They didn't double it.
Oh, sorry. They started it up one tier higher. So the first one
Exactly.
gives +2 attack to the next minion you buy this turn. And the next one
Right.
is +3. So they basically pretend you start off already have bought a minion or something, right? They just start the
Uh,
step up higher.
well, no, not that you bought a minion, just that the game started 1 turn earlier for you. Because
Uh,
it's not.
oh yeah,
It's
okay. It
not
upgrades each
like
turn. Right. My bad.
right. It upgrades each turn, so it's still bad. When people first read this, they assume like not assume, but they were like, whoa, wait, is it? Do they mean give +2 attack and then next it's 4,
Mm-hmm.
6,
Yeah,
10, and
that's what
then they're
I
like, whoa,
thought.
that it's like, oh wait, that's spicy.
Yeah,
No, it's not
no, okay.
spicy.
Well, this was going to still suck. Why make these changes? Anyway, move on. Like that's what they need to do to make it a tier 1/tier 2 hero.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, look, it's I think it just needs to be a little bit different.
Yeah,
Um,
or redesign.
I think it could really, really use the redesign. It's okay for like right now. The stats are saying it's like okay-ish.
Is it really?
Uh, yeah, but like
What's
I don't.
the win rate for top 1% players?
It's Reno. It's like Reno
Oh,
level.
that's not
Yeah.
that bad. I thought this would be
Uh,
way worse.
no,
Okay.
it's not that bad exactly. Because right now, once again, tier four comps are pretty strong. And there's always going to be someone who reaches tier six comps, but it's sort of like tier four comps, and then tier six comps. Uh, the Overlord, he's not getting first place. Like him getting first place is really, really tiny, as in those chances. Meanwhile, the Reno, who he's tied with in average placement, gets first like twice as much. But of course, Reno bombs a lot more, and the
Mm-hmm.
Overlord, like he gets like third and fourth a lot more often. So
Okay.
um, it just sort of fits. Like you can play that taunt comp, uh, Divine Shield, Ground Shaker, Mech, Tier Four, like sort of comp with him, and really, really good for doing that. So still not a good hero, right? Like people can pick Reno and they're like, okay, this is acceptable, but it's not like amazing.
Alright. Next up is Nazath. Nazath used to start the game with a 1/1 fish that gains all your death rattles in combat. Same deal is now 2/2 fish.
Yeah. The fish is such an interesting idea. I love the fish, but whenever I play it, it's always been pretty awkward. Um, the fish is okay. Like it's sitting at the same tier placement right now as something like Barov or Tess, which isn't that bad. It's really not that bad. It's still like, low tier two. And just starting the game with a 2-2 period is decent, as we will see
Mm-hmm.
below. But it's always been tough for me to like figure out like the best way to fit Nizoth in.
Alright. Next up is the Curator.
Oh,
And you get the
yeah.
Amalgam. Used to be 1/1. They buffed it to 1/2. Now it's a 2/2.
Man, they're just so slow with this. As you said, it's like we could have had a 2-2 amalgam for ages now. But is it better? Yeah. You guys know how much I love Curator. I love the fact that it's a 2-2. But yeah, the win rates definitely don't aren't kind to the Curator. It's significantly lower than Nazoth, and understandably so, because the 2-2 fish can do things earlier. Whereas this thing, it's like, yeah, you can put like Divine Shield and Poison on it, but that's later on in the game. While Nazoth can just like get you that an extra tempo or extra buffs immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Curator, they got to do something else with you. Like,
Yeah.
because you can't really start the game with something like a 4-4. Like you could, but I don't know if that's healthy for the game. It gets to a point where you can't just start the game with like an overstated minion. That's not fantastic, and it's also just not super duper fun. So they got to figure out something.
They should do it so that in, I don't know, 4 turns, 5 turns, 6 turns, or whatever, add another copy of this into your hand.
Oh,
Like have
huh.
a set timer, and then or maybe have a set thing where it's like when this reaches 8 attack, add a copy into your hand. Just something.
Oh, huh.
Because
Okay,
that's what you
that's
want it to do,
interesting.
right? Like you said, you don't want it to be a 4/4. Like it's not fun. What you want to do is like more amalgamy things.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We could play around with that. I
Yeah,
agree with
like I
that.
don't know what the balance of it is, but that design wise, that's the direction that I think would be better than just moving this number around. Because sometimes you look at something like For the Horde, like that's a hero power where you just move numbers around, right? Like the hero power itself, you can see what it does, right? It's pretty straightforward. It's kind of elegant, and you're like, all right, well, we can mess around with it, but you can also just change numbers until the win rates match. This one, when you change the numbers more, it just messes with the flavor too much, and you really just gotta do something else with it. So that's my pitch. They could go anywhere with it, but I mean, you're right. You can't. They just can't keep moving numbers around. It's a fail way for design for amalgam going forward.
I would say something like a 2-3 is the limit of what you should do in order to not just like, oh, have it completely dominate for the first few
Yeah,
turns, right? Like,
yeah.
let's not have that.
And a 2-3
Um,
wouldn't make this a playable hero.
no, a 2-3 would still make it suck, unfortunately. Um, Mukla got its big banana rate increase to 50%, up from 33%. That's fine. Like Mukla is a pickable hero right now. It's like tied with Barov and Wagtoggle, basically. It's pickable.
Mm-hmm.
You're just never getting first. Once again, it's these heroes, right? Like BG's is right now, unfortunately plagued with um just some heroes that uh get first too often, like Hook Tusk, and some heroes that aren't fun exactly and never get first. Like just never ever ever get first. And once again, that's a problem. That's a big problem for future patches, but we're seeing that more and more and more. Anyways,
On to
onto
the
the minion.
actual spicy stuff.
There's enough spice. Okay. Before we talk about the minions, the one of the biggest changes, period, is Dark Moon prizes actually return in 25% of all games. That's huge. That's like introducing tribes almost.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys don't remember the Dark Moon prizes, there's too much to name. You can just go and look at patch 20.8 on the
They
Hearthstone
balanced a
website.
bunch of them though.
They balanced a bunch of them as well. So yeah, we should talk about that. And this is mentioned in the patch notes, but you might skim through it. They state this: if you are in the bottom half of players on the leaderboard, and I'm guessing it's not the actual leaderboard, it's like, of the players in the lobby. If you're in the bottom half, you are more likely to see better prizes. That's huge. It's not a change I love, by the way.
Wait, if
I
you are in the bottom half of players, so the games for bad players are different than the games for good players, or does it mean in your lobby?
in your lobby.
They mean
In
in
your
your
lobby.
lobby? Seriously?
Yeah, so if you are currently at that time doing worse, you get better prizes.
No.
It's not a good change. Yes. Because that's not exactly how BGs work. As
Lithorak
in,
says in chat says people will game that. I don't think you can game it. I think it's just bad. Like,
no,
how are you going
it's
to
not
game it? You can't control
exactly
which lobby you go into.
uh yeah, so it's not exactly gaming it, but with the way that BG works, especially now, you have some heroes that they're not like being like, "Oh, prizes are in, so I'm going to do worse." It's just they naturally kind of get lower in health because they are able to greed, but because of the greed, they're going down low in health anyways, and then they were going to pop off anyways, but by giving them better prizes, because at that snapshot, BGs are like, oh, but you're so weak right now, you
Mm-hmm.
suck, and but the player sitting there,
Wait,
we've all seen this.
was this the old way of giving
No,
prizes?
it was random. It was random. The
Oh.
old way was
Well, but
random,
that's not how it is this time right now. It's not like whoever has the lowest health. It's whoever has the lowest position on the leaderboard.
which is health.
Oh, you think they mean the leaderboard as in the thing on the left hand of the screen?
Yeah, how does this make sense?
Oh,
How does
okay.
it make sense in your way?
Well, I was going by MMR. I thought it was like a blue shell MMR thing.
No, if you are
Okay.
in the bottom half of players on
I
the
see. So this is
leaderboard,
okay. So this is another thumb on the scale for low health people. Just like you have a higher chance to hit the ghosts.
Yeah, exactly. With the ghost though, it makes sense, I think, in terms of the
Why?
game design. That I can like with that, I think it is.
It's the same as
I
this. You get a free turn in that case, right? In this case, you get a free power up.
Yeah, you get a free turn, but it's not as easy because the power level of these prizes are pretty insane. So like I
No,
think
it's
you
just a
pop
lower
off
level,
harder
but
with
I
these
just mean like
prizes.
philosophically, it's the exact same thing. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
any better of design. You're
Right,
just
right.
saying
Number one,
it's
right? No,
less
no,
like
no.
basically instead of getting
Philosophically,
punched in the
it
face,
is
you
the
get
same,
stabbed,
but it
and
is
you'd rather
more
get punched
of
in the
that.
face than get stabbed in the face.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm saying it is more of that, and there
Right.
has to be a limit to it,
Right,
right?
right, right. At a certain point, the person will die, and you don't want
Right.
that to happen. So you're
So
okay
I'm
with
saying
punching. You're not okay
I
with stabbing.
philosophically agree that it is the same sort of principle, but we
Right.
have to stop it somewhere, and this is too
Okay.
much, number one. And number two, the pop-off potential here with the prizes is more than just facing a ghost. Because you face a ghost and you're
Right.
not getting
It's
you get more
controlled.
room. Yeah, you're
Hmm.
getting more room, but you're just doing the same things that other people are able to do. Here,
Yeah.
you are doing stuff sometimes like much more than other people are supposed to do.
Hmm.
Um, but that's sort of where we're at.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just don't like it when you punch people in the face for being good. I don't know. This feels like that there's better blue shell designs than stuff like either of these kinds of things. Especially in
Yeah,
like short games like Battlegrounds, like really like, and especially because you're MMRing the whole thing anyway, so you always have incentive to get one place higher. In fact, get like I keep saying this, the difference between first and second place is the same as the difference between seventh and eighth place. So if in every game that you would have placed eighth, you instead place seventh, that's like in every game that you got second, you get first. It's huge. So you're already incentivized like that. Like this is not a game that needs a blue shell mechanic.
yeah, it isn't. It truly isn't. So let's not do that, especially with something like prizes, like that. The jump, the leap that you get in prizes, is more than just one turn of freedom.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, people in chat's talking about like the ghost being a solution to odd numbers. Well, then you can have equal chance of facing the ghost. That's the
yeah,
normal thing. But instead, they make it so only the players who are lower on health get to face the ghost. So
yep,
that's I don't know if people know that by the way, but that's what it is. Like if you're like number one and there's seven players left, you will literally 100% of the time never face the ghost. I don't know if you noticed, um, but it's just the game just penalizes you for having high health.
yeah. The game penalized that, and once again, am I okay with some aspect of it? Yes, that's why I was like, yeah,
No,
I'm
I'm not okay
okay
with
with
any
the ghost
aspect
thing.
of it. That's just all bad game design for this particular game. Not I'm not against blue shell like effects in general, but in battlegrounds because of how MMR is tracked, it is entirely unnecessary.
So, I think a lot of people, because once again, you see, we have a difference in kind of philosophy. I'm saying, and like it's fine, right? Like as long as it is kind of like MMR will even out over time, and that's what Adulta is saying. It's like we don't need it. Like it's MMR. Like if you get screwed this game, like you could get stomped, and then you are going to do the stomping
No, no, no.
and
I'm not even saying
extend your
that. I'm
play.
saying that even if you're getting stomped, you're incentivized because the whole point of Blue Shell is to like if you're a Mario Kart and you're in eighth place and you're really far behind or whatever, you're like not incentivized to keep trying. But because like if a Mario Kart, for example, if they didn't just give points to the first three players and they gave points to like all eight players and it's all even, they would not need a Blue Shell. And that point, Blue Shell would be a bad design. Anything that disadvantages people for doing better would be bad design in that place. The only reason you have stuff to do that in game design is so the players in the back can have a reason to continue playing in a way that is meaningful to them. And the MMR system of this Hearthstone's battlegrounds of even placements, which is kind of terrible for all other purposes. Like I know I abuse it, and I talk a lot of my strategy based on it, but that's not good design either. But if you're gonna go with that kind of like MMR system, then you really don't need this blue shell effect in any form. Like if they change it so that like number one gets 100 points, everybody else loses 10 or something, right? Like then yeah, sure, then this is the kind of stuff that you would need to keep the game spicy, but you don't need it in Battleground.
All right. So the prizes were changed. Might of Stormwind, which is a tier 1 prize, has been changed from give all of your minions plus 1 to give 3 random friendly minions +1/+1. The good stuff is now changed to give minions in Bob's Tavern +2 health for the rest of the game. Used to be +1. And great deal. This was, let's see, a tier 2 prize. Now it's for the rest of the game. Reduce the cost of upgrading Bob's Tavern by 3 at the end of your turn. It used to be +2. And then I'm still just a rat in a cage. Has been moved. Uh, that is now it moved from prize turn 3 to prize turn 2. And that's double a minion's attack. So those are the updates to the prizes. I like the change to Might of Stormwind, especially because that was the auto pick. If you had Might of Stormwind, you were always picking Might of Stormwind. Sometimes you might pick like the 2 gold. Maybe you pick the refresh, not really, but you almost never picked the good stuff. And now you can pick it like +2 health for the rest of the game. Oh, okay, that's not bad. You're still going to pick Might of Stormwind a decent amount of time because +3 is not that bad. Good changes overall, though. Might of Stormwind was a little bit too powerful and just a little bit too good. And at that point, a lot of times it was like, did you get Might of Stormwind? Did your opponent get it? And whoever got it, like if you both got it, that's fine. We keep playing the game. If only one of you got it, then it was a little bit too much damage at that point.
All right, on to the minions, the spicy stuff that I keep saying. First change, Deflectobot's ability got doubled. About time. I've been pushing for this since the beginning. They finally did it. Not that Deflectobot needed to be better exactly, to like maintain how good it is relative to the average card, but it was always the flagship card of mechs, so I was in favor of making it even better. And now it's there. Is this messing up the meta yet?
Uh, it's not exactly messing up the meta, as in mechs aren't like, oh my gosh, they're just taking over. This is Quillbore release 2.0. But I think if you ask a lot of players, especially good players, they will tell you that Deflectobot has been quite good already.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was reaching that point, right? Remember, tier 4, and then you wait and see, are you the person popping off on tier 6? If not, you just play tier 4. You either play taunt comp, like a hybrid taunt comp or something. You do mechs, and then with mechs, sometimes you taunt up the deflectos, right? To do kind of like refreshes and then scam like with like refreshes and deflecto, or you can play pure mech comp. So even before the buff, deflectos were good. They
Mm-hmm.
were they were quite good. This certainly helps. This is nice, right? Like anytime you double the effect of it, um, and yeah, mechs are better, but it's not something people are like, oh my gosh, this is the new world
See,
beater
that's
here.
exactly my point. That's why they always should have doubled it. If they doubled it a year ago when I suggested it, it would have been fine too. And it would have made mechs more mech like it flavor wise, it's just so good to have it doubled compared to having +1, and it won't totally unbalance the game. Those are the best kinds of changes. So I'm super glad they finally did this.
Lieutenant Gar has been updated from an 8-1 to an 8-8. Oh my gosh, about damn time. Gar was the worst thing to get on tier 6. You couldn't even tempo it because an 8-1, no tempo options. I'm not saying you're happy getting an
I was
8-8
about to
now.
say, is this like
However,
good now? This still feels kind of bad.
no, but like it wasn't the completely dead pick
Okay.
that it was before sometimes. And if you are playing elementals now, the ramp up is significantly faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're getting this early, relatively early, then the 7 health at that point is still very, very relevant.
Mm.
The next change is
But
something
so
that
is Lieutenant Gar like pickable
it's not
now if you're
good.
going elementals or still bad?
Depends on what kind of elementals.
Okay, so
So
sometimes pickable if you are already going elementals.
right, it really hasn't changed. It really hasn't
Okay.
changed. Here's the thing, does it change the rubric of kind of like, oh, when you pick Gar? Not really, because you can only pick Gar, if you are doing that sort of like big elementals,
Yep.
right? If you're doing big elementals, and if you're doing big elementals, you were probably gonna get Gar anyways. And if you weren't getting him, you weren't getting him. This just helps big elementals uh duke it out and ramp up a little bit faster without taking damage. That's really what it does.
Okay. Next up, Refreshing Anomaly. Used to be a 1-3. It's the one that battle cry your next refresh cost 0. Now a 1-4.
I don't know why they needed this change. I thought Anomaly was fine where it was. And it's a strange one for me because we've talked about this philosophy before on this channel where uh you want a tribe to be used a little bit more, you want to be more powerful. Great. So what you can do is start the snowball, right? Incentivize them to start the snowball. This ain't it though.
Yep.
Elementals have never been kind of like oh, we just need people to pick refreshing anomaly a little
Yeah.
bit
Or like,
earlier.
oh no. I mean, it gives you potentially like 2 more health later
Yeah.
on. Like,
Anomaly here, it's just very, very odd. I don't understand exactly why. Turn one, you can pick it more often, but the chances of you deciding on an elemental tribe eventually because you picked Anomaly earlier on, there's like zero correlation there. There's none.
mhm.
Meanwhile, there are some correlations with like other units, even tier
Well,
one
think about it
units.
this way. Maybe the buff is not for elementals. Maybe the buff is for the playstyle in which they wanted more people to take Refreshing Anomaly as the first pick, even if they were not going elementals. Because they like the playstyle and the opportunity for you to bank a mana, basically, right? Because Battleground design has always, in the last like year and a half, been trying to find ways to like backdoor in the ability to bank mana that they don't naturally have as compared to other games like it. So they may just want to make this unit better for everybody so that more people are banking stuff.
Sure. And I guess that's okay, but it's just a little bit strange.
I like it.
Anyways,
I think it incentivizes you to pick this unit on tier 1, and the ability to bank a mana on tier 1, and the ability to kind of like fix your RNG on a later turn. That's all good. It's good for skill, it's good for diversity. This is just a positive change in the game.
meh. All right, the next unit is Big Fernal. They buffed it from a 4/4 to a 6/6. Demons are meh. They're still not exciting. Well, the main problem I see with demons right now is just how boring they are. And I think a lot of people will agree with just how boring they are. That's sort of the main problem with demons. And they received a couple of decent buffs you'll see later on. Actually, let's just discuss all the demon buffs.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to Big Fernal, Soul Juggler has been buffed from a 3/3 to a 3/5. That's huge. That's
Mm-hmm.
so huge. It's now a
Keep in mind, it's
tempo 3 drop.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's
it's
become
now
a
a tempo
normally
3.
tempo 3 drop.
hmm So you can now pick it, and that does wonders for it. Uh, the Overseer has been buffed from a 2/3 to a 2/4. It used to be
Hey,
2/4.
back
Yeah,
where it was.
back where it was. And we still picked Overseer a lot when it was a 2/3 because, giving a 2/2 buff that early on was quite good. They buffed demons a decent amount. The only problem is just the actual play style of demons. I think they've been trying to change it a little bit. I think it needs kind of a complete rework. It's not doing that poorly though. Like demons do fine. I think we've all just grown a little bit overall tired of this demon playstyle, and it definitely helps. I think the Soul Juggler um, kind of buff to 3/5 helps a ton. Now it can survive quite a few things,
Like
especially in those
another
early
soul
turns.
juggler.
Like another Soul Juggler, exactly.
That's huge. Like that's just good design, right? Like even if it was just a 3/4 and not a 3/5, like the ability to survive the other soul juggler makes it so much less random. And these are all like it's
Yeah,
like the anomaly thing, like these small changes sometimes where you're like, I mean, this was a big change because it became a decent tempo unit. But even if you just make those small changes, you're like finessing the game into a better overall experience that you might not even notice if you're playing. But then you if you play in large volumes, you'll feel it. You'll just end up having like a 0.25 out of 10 better experience overall because the game feels smoother.
how many times pre Soul Juggler buff were you on tier 3? You just want tempo, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see a Soul Juggler and you tell yourself, I can't take this because I'm on tier 3 and I can't just take a stupid 3/3 that has no synergy currently. So you don't buy that, you roll, and then suddenly there's double imprisoners there, right? Whereas if you had bought the Soul Juggler, maybe then you roll, and then you're like, oh man, now it's really good. It's just that snowball, right? We're talking about this sort of snowball, incentivize people to pick it earlier on, and then the later stuff that they wouldn't have picked because they didn't initially buy the Soul Juggler, now they buy it. It's a good change, but man, demons back to the lab. Let's fix it somehow. It's just okay. Other than that, for dragons, Razorgore has been buffed from a 2/4 to a 4/6.
Yay!
Yeah, that's good.
It's kind of needed.
It's
It
kind
always
of
felt
needed.
bad to take a Razor Gore, even if you already have dragons, and it should never be like that. Like you should be
Yeah,
very happy to get a Razor Gore if you already have a couple dragons. That's how building stuff works.
yeah. So I think this change is absolutely fine. Uh, let's talk about beasts,
Oh
your
my
favorite
god.
tribe. Except these are higher tier.
No, tier 2 beasts. What are you talking about? There was a
No,
huge buff to tier 2 beasts.
you're all about the tier 1 beasts,
Okay,
okay?
but like I do go to tier 2.
Right, you go to tier 2, so you can buy tier 1 things. Pack Leader has been buffed from a 3/3 to a 3/4. Oh, finally. When they first nerfed
Huge
Pack
buff.
Leader to a 2/3, it was like, what are you doing? Like, do you not ever want to see this card? And now it's a 3/4, which means it's a tempo 2 drop. And it's the snowball mechanic. You buy this because it was just the best tempo
Mhm.
unit, and then afterwards you see that rat pack on 3. You wouldn't have bought it before. Now you do buy it, and now you figure things out past that point.
Like they've realized
It's just
with
very
the
cool.
cool bores coming in and all the new whatever mechanics that all these supposedly viable early mid tier boosters are no longer attractive at all, and so they needed to up it to the current meta. Like that's why you see Soul Juggler getting changed. That's why you see Pack Leader getting changed. These are engines for their respective tribes, and they were not cutting it. Like they were bad cards that you could have done if you were going to force it or if you haven't had the perfect configuration of that particular tribe. And now, like Merp said, you can kind of be led into more stuff. And that creates more diversity and it makes like these beast end games and these demon end games and whatever potentially like more frequently seen, which creates a more diverse meta, which is good for everybody.
Yep. And then we have the Mama. Mama is now a 5/5 instead of a 4/4, and it gives Beast +5/+5 instead of +4/+4. And Mama Bear has moved a lot. It's been shifted from tier 6 to tier 5, and then just move, here and there. It's been nerfed, stats have changed. It's good. Like this is a good change, giving every beast that you summon an additional +1/+1, and also of course like
Giving
the
itself
minion
plus one
itself.
plus one.
Yeah, so you can, and I'm not saying that like, oh, Mama Bear beasts are the new meta or anything. If you're talking about beast compositions that win the game more often, it's still going to be the Goldrin Parrot because that's just really powerful. Like in terms of end game, like 1v1, those comps are going to be the beast comps that win the most often. But beasts have been improved significantly here. Like you can absolutely do well and gain MMR by picking up mama bears, just playing more beasts, playing those rat packs, playing those hydras, just buffing them up, because those stats really, really, really add up.
All right. That's any final thoughts on the meta and things like that before we end this?
I'm excited to try out BGs, not so much because this patch changes everything, but if you were to look at the problems with BGs, and then you look at what they tried to target in this patch, not saying they did everything perfectly, but they really nailed a lot of like in terms of identifying a lot of the things that were wrong before. Whether or not we'll actually have like the perfect meta, probably not. But they did a really good job at just identifying that. Oh, we forgot a new minion. So
Oh yeah, that's right.
there's a new tier 6 minion. It's Arc Druid Hamul, and it is a 4/4 battle cry. Refresh Bob's Tavern with minions of your most common type. Super cool. I mean, you can play it as like a, oh, this helps my mono tribe or, predominantly mono tribe thing. But what it also does, very interestingly, is it opens up very specific finds in games in which these tribes are unlimited. So one cool thing that we saw very fast after the patch came out was, for example, oh, there were no beasts, right? Like in a no beasts game, like someone had, I think, like boars, like a few boars, because there were quill boars. So they had the great boar in there, and then they played Hamul, and because they identified it as beasts, but there were no beasts, so the only beasts in the game were the great boar and amalgadons. So it's just
Mm.
an interesting little wrinkle in there in which you can try to manipulate it, either to get the tribe that is in the game that fits with your current board and try to snowball from there, or identify these niche kind of just weird situations in which it's like, wait, I could turn this battle cry into give me all of this quote tribe, but because there's only 2 minions in the game with that tag, just give me a Malgadon, this other minion. It's a
Yeah.
pretty cool
I
thing.
mean, one more thing that it does though is that establishes tier 6. It's just kind of everybody wants to be there. So tier 5 really needs to catch up. And honestly, tier 6 needs to go back up in mana cost. They changed it, and back then it made sense, but they're kind of restoring order now with all this stuff, and that's the next thing. Like you notice a lot of things that were nerfed getting restored to the new power levels. And part of the things I think that's needed for the balance of the game is for tier 6 to get restored to its original cost to upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about this before. They did math on it before they released it. It wasn't just tested, or maybe they just tested it and it worked out to the way math worked out. But then no one was doing tier 6 because their units on there were not balanced. And, think about, what do you call that? The mech that's still in the game right now, Sneeds. Um, Sneeds was tier 6. Like, it's crap like that. And then they're like, oh, no one wants to go to tier 6. I guess we lower the cost. No. You don't mess up your fundamental maths in the game, and you fix the other stuff. But it was much harder to fix the other stuff. It was much easier to lower tier 6 by 1. And so the game's been working on it since then. But we've had like a billion patches since then to balance. And balance is getting better, and diversity is getting better. And I think we're at the point now in Battlegrounds where they really do need to restore this tier 6 cost, or else it's going to be harder to balance going forward rather than easier. Like, we're past that point in which it was easier to balance with this bad math than it is to get to the good math. So I think that's coming up. I don't know when it's coming, but I think they have to, like, the people who are working on this have to come to that conclusion at some point, especially given how bad tier 5 is right now.
Yep. Okay. That's where we are at. this was a long one, but once again, the patch was huge. Lots of changes. I'm ready to get back into BGs, try to figure things out. It's a very different game from when I left it. And when I mean left it, I really left it in like December of 2020. I played some BGs between then and now, but not that much. So I'm looking forward to getting back into it, learning as much as I can. And it just really makes me hopeful that good changes are on the way because I think the changes that they made like really signal from Blizzard's like, okay, we understand like what is kind of making the meta
Mm-hmm.
problematic, and we're working on it. It might not be one patch or two patch or even three patches, but for a company to put out a patch and for me to see it and be like, okay, they understand,
Yeah.
that's huge. So I'm ready to jump back in.
I feel like for BGs overall, usually when they nerf or buff something and make a balance change, I'm like, good, good. You could tell that they're like understanding it. Every now and then, something like might have happens where you're just like, yeah. But for the most part, it's good. They seem to really understand battlegrounds fundamentally in a way that they do not understand arena, for example. So that even when they try to balance arena, it's not particularly great.
It
Um,
has to be on your mind in order to understand it.
yeah. Oh, I mean that's fair. So yeah. And this was a big patch, and it had so many good things. Even the stuff that people like. I'm reading chat as we do this podcast live, and some of the little changes that Merps dismissed as like, oh, it probably doesn't make that big of a difference. There's still good small changes. Like that kind of polish coming into the game, it feels like this game is taking that final step that it's getting to before they're ready to take off the beta tag. Like, I would not be surprised if in November of this year the beta tag finally comes off of Battlegrounds. Because we're getting to these changes that are like small and they're doing it. And that is new for this patch. Usually the changes are bigger, they address specific problems. Now we're getting to these changes that are just for polish to make the game smoother for that game experience on the balance side.
Yep. Okay. That's it. It's been a long time. No question this week. Let's
Yeah,
just
no
end
question
this.
from the GOAT. This has been a long podcast. Big shout out to our Patreons at patreon.com. Thank you guys so much. Patreon.com/grindinggoat for keeping the lights on at the Lightforge. Until next week, this is Adwicta.
This is Merps. See you guys.